I stood in the hallway of the building I had owned for 15 years, staring at the brass number 402 on my door. My suitcase handle was digging into my palm, my other hand gripping my keyring. It was 2 in the morning. My flight from Chicago had been delayed 3 times. I had been awake for 20 hours, and all I wanted was my own bed, my own pillow, and the silence of my own home. I slid the key into the deadbolt. It went in halfway and stopped. I pulled it out, frowned, and tried again. I jiggled it. I applied a little pressure. Nothing. It hit a hard, metallic stop. It wasn't just stuck, the biting of the key didn't match the pins. I took a step back, looked at the number again to ensure I wasn't losing my mind from sleep deprivation. 402. This was my apartment. This was the home I had paid off 3 years early by working 60-hour weeks. I tried the bottom lock, the handle. Locked. My key didn't fit that one either. A cold, prickly heat washed over the back of my neck. It wasn't fear, it was a realization so sharp it felt like a physical blow. The locks hadn't broken. They had been changed. I knocked. First softly, then harder. Brenda? Dave? It's me. Open up. Silence from inside. I knew they were in there. I could see the faint blue flicker of the television reflecting against the peephole lens. I knocked again, using the flat of my fist this time, a heavy thud that echoed in the quiet hallway. Brenda. I know you're in there. Open the door. My key doesn't work. I heard shuffling. The TV volume went down. Then, footsteps approaching the door. I expected the latch to throw, the door to swing open, and my sister to offer a groggy, confused apology about a broken lock they had to replace in an emergency. Instead, the deadbolt stayed fast. The voice that came through the wood wasn't apologetic. It was my brother-in-law, Dave, and he sounded terrifyingly calm. Go away, Mark, he said. It's late. You're waking the kids. I blinked, my brain struggling to process the audacity. Excuse me? Dave, open the door. It's my apartment. I just got back from the trip. Let me in. We're not opening the door, Dave said. You can't just show up here in the middle of the night demanding entry. We live here now. You need to call before you come over. My grip on the suitcase tightened until my knuckles turned white. What do you mean call before I come over? I live here. You are guests. We agreed you were staying until I got back from Chicago. I am back. Open the door, or I'm getting a locksmith. You do that, Dave said, his voice dripping with a smug confidence that made my blood boil. You try to break in, and we'll have a problem. We have rights, Mark. We've established residency. You can't just kick a family out on the street because you're having a mood swing. Go stay at a hotel. We'll talk about this when you're rational. Then, the TV volume went back up. I stood there for a full minute, staring at the wood grain, listening to the muffled sound of a laugh track from a sitcom inside my own living room. I didn't scream. I didn't kick the door down. I didn't call the police. I simply turned around, walked down the hall, and got into the elevator. I checked into a motel 3 miles away, sat on the edge of the bed in a room that smelled like stale lemon polish, and realized that my life as I knew it had just been hijacked by the people I loved. To understand how a man lets a viper into his bed, you have to understand the history of the viper. My sister Brenda is 5 years younger than me. We grew up in a standard blue-collar household. Our dad drove a truck, and Mom worked retail. The ethos was simple: you work hard, you pay your bills, you keep your word. I took that to heart. I started working construction straight out of high school, saved every dime, invested in real estate when the market was garbage, and eventually bought a 4-unit apartment building. I lived in 1 unit and rented out the other 3. It was my retirement plan, my safety net, my pride. Brenda took a different path. She was always the one with the bad luck. It was never her fault. She lost her job because the manager was jealous of her. She crashed her car because the road was designed poorly. She fell behind on rent because the bank made a mistake. And then she met Dave. Dave was a man who had turned victimhood into a professional sport. He was 45, had held 20 jobs in 10 years, and had an excuse for every single firing. He was a visionary that corporate America just couldn't handle. Together, they were a hurricane of chaos. 6 months ago, the hurricane made landfall. I was sitting in my living room, reviewing tenant leases, when my phone rang. It was our mother. She was crying. "Mark, you have to help them," she sobbed. "They're being evicted. The landlord is a monster. He's throwing them and the kids out on the street tomorrow." "Mom, stop," I said, rubbing my temples. "Why are they being evicted? Did they pay the rent?" "It's not about the rent. They withheld it because the landlord wouldn't fix the dishwasher. It's a protest." I knew immediately that was a lie, or at least a distortion. You don't get evicted overnight for a broken dishwasher. "Mom, how many months are they behind?" "3, she whispered. "But Dave has a settlement coming. He slipped at the grocery store last year, remember? The check is practically in the mail. Mark, please. They have nowhere to go. Think of the kids." The kids. That was always the trump card. My niece, Sarah, was 12. My nephew, Ben, was 8. They were good kids, innocent bystanders in the train wreck of their parents' lives. I couldn't let them sleep in a shelter or Dave's rusted-out van. "Fine," I said. "Have them come over. We need to talk." They arrived an hour later. They didn't look humbled, they looked indignant. Dave walked in, looked around my apartment, which I kept immaculate, and let out a low whistle. "Must be nice," he said. "Profiting off the housing crisis while the rest of us struggle." "Sit down, Dave," I said. We sat at my dining room table. I laid it out clearly. "I have a business trip coming up in 2 months. I will be gone for 3 weeks. You can stay here, rent-free, for exactly 3 months. That gives you time to get the settlement check, find jobs, and get a new place. But there are rules." I pulled out a piece of paper where I had written them down. "No smoking in the apartment. You pay for your own groceries. You keep the place clean. You do not touch my home office. Move-out date is hard set for November 1st. Brenda looked at the paper and rolled her eyes. "Mark, we're family, not tenants. You don't need a contract." "I absolutely need a contract," I said. "Sign it, or you don't stay." Dave grumbled, snatching the pen. "You treat your family like employees. It's sick, man. But whatever. We'll be out long before November. I've got a lead on a management position at a logistics firm. Big money." They signed. I gave them the spare keys. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was being a good brother. The first month was tolerable, in the way a toothache is tolerable before it becomes an abscess. It started with small boundary violations. I'd come home from work to find Dave sitting in my recliner, wearing just his boxers, eating my food. "I thought I said you buy your own groceries," I said one evening, staring at the empty container of leftovers I had made for my lunch. "Relax, Mark," Dave said, mouth full. I was starving. "The kids ate all our stuff. You want me to starve?" "I want you to ask," I said. "You have so much," Brenda chimed in from the kitchen. "Why are you so stingy? We're struggling, and you're worried about some lasagna." I let it slide. That was my mistake. I let it slide because I didn't want to fight in front of the kids, who were doing homework at the table. Then came the clutter. My minimalist living room began to fill with their boxes. "Just until we sort through it," Brenda promised. "Storage is so expensive." By week 6, my apartment looked like a flea market. Piles of clothes, broken toys, and stacks of old magazines covered every surface. The smell changed, from coffee and wood polish to stale laundry and fried onions. I tried to maintain order. I spent my weekends cleaning up after them while Dave watched football and Brenda networked on her phone. "Dave, can you take the trash out?" I asked one Saturday. "I'm watching the game, Mark. I'll get to it." He never did. I took it out. The tension was building, but the end was in sight. My business trip to Chicago was scheduled for mid-October. I would be gone for 3 weeks. When I returned, it would be November 1st, move-out day. A week before I left, I sat them down again. "Okay," I said. "I'm leaving next Tuesday. When I get back, the 3 months are up. How is the apartment hunting going?" Brenda looked at her nails. "Well, the market is terrible right now. Prices are insane." "And the job?" I asked Dave. "The interviewer was an idiot," Dave said. He didn't like that I didn't have a degree. Classist jerk. But I'm looking. You have 3 weeks, I said firmly. November 1st. That is the deadline. I have a tenant lined up for the guest room starting in December, a lie, but a necessary one, so you have to be out. We get it, Dave waved a hand dismissively. Don't stress. Go on your fancy trip. We'll be gone. I packed my bags. I locked my office door, the one room I had kept strictly off limits, and double-checked that my files were secure. I said goodbye to the kids, gave Brenda a hug, and told Dave to keep the noise down for the neighbors. I left for Chicago feeling a knot in my stomach. I ignored it. I told myself it was just travel anxiety. While I was in Chicago, the communication was sparse. I texted Brenda to check in. Me, everything okay at the place? Brenda, fine. Having fun. Me, working hard. Remember, trash day is Tuesday. Brenda, we know, Mark. Stop micromanaging us from another state. After the first week, they stopped replying. I called, it went to voicemail. I assumed they were busy packing. I focused on my work. The project was a massive renovation consultation for a historic hotel. It required all my focus. I didn't have time to baby my adult sister. Then came the return flight. The delay. The cab ride. And finally, the key that didn't turn. Morning in the motel brought clarity, but not peace. I sat up, showered in the lukewarm water, and put on the same clothes I had traveled in. I needed a plan. I called my mother first. Mom, I said, keeping my voice steady. Did you know Brenda changed the locks on my apartment? There was a long pause. Too long. Mark, she said, her voice trembling. They were just so scared. You were so adamant about kicking them out. They didn't have anywhere to go. So they stole my apartment? I asked. You knew? You knew they were going to do this. They aren't stealing it, she cried. They just need more time. Dave said you were being unreasonable, that you were threatening them. They did it to feel safe. Just let them stay a few more months until after Christmas. Don't ruin the holidays. Mom, it is October. Christmas is 2 months away. I am currently homeless because of your daughter. You have money, she snapped. You can stay in a hotel. They have children. Be the bigger person, Mark. I hung up. The bigger person argument. The weapon of choice for enablers everywhere. I drove to my building. I didn't park in my spot. Dave's van was there, leaking oil onto the concrete I had paid to resurface last year. I parked on the street. I walked into the vestibule. I didn't go up to Unit 402. I went to Unit 101. Mrs. Gable. She was 80 years old, the neighborhood watch in human form, and she adored me because I always carried her groceries. I knocked. She opened the door, looking surprised. Mark. You're back. I thought you moved out. My stomach dropped. Why did you think that, Mrs. Gable? Well, your brother-in-law told everyone, she said, clutching her cardigan. He said you got a job in Chicago and gave the apartment to them. He's been attending the tenant meetings, Mark. He told the others that he's the new building manager. I felt the blood drain from my face. He said what? He said he's managing the building for you now. He collected Mrs. Higgins' rent check yesterday. Cash. I saw red. It wasn't just squatting anymore. This was fraud. Dave was collecting rent from my other tenants. Mrs. Gable, I said, my voice shaking. I did not move. I did not hire Dave. He is lying. Do not give him any money. Tell everyone. I left her unit and marched up the stairs. I didn't care about disturbing the peace anymore. I pounded on my door. Dave. Open up. I know you're in there. The door opened this time. But it wasn't the latch being thrown. It was opened with the chain on. Dave's face appeared in the crack, looking smugger than ever. I told you, he said. Call first. You collected rent from Mrs. Higgins, I said. That is theft, Dave. Give me the money and get out of my house. I collected a management fee, he said smoothly. I fixed her sink. I'm working, Mark. Earning my keep. Since you abandoned the building. I was on a business trip. Open the door. You're trespassing, he said. If you don't leave, I'll call the police. I'll tell them you're harassing my family. I have texts where you threaten to throw us out. I have a lease. You don't have a lease. I have a piece of paper that says we live here until November 1st. And since you're harassing us, we're claiming tenant protection. Eviction takes months, Mark. Maybe years in this city. You want to pay a lawyer, or do you want to go away and let us live in peace? He slammed the door. I heard the deadbolt slide home. He was right about one thing. In my city, eviction was a nightmare. Even if I filed today, it could take 6 months to get a court order. They knew that. They had clearly done their research. They planned to squat, use the slow legal system as a shield, and live on my dime while Dave played landlord and stole my income. I went back to the motel. I sat down and opened my laptop. I didn't look for a lawyer. Not yet. Lawyers cost money and took time. I needed something immediate. I needed to understand what I was dealing with. I checked my bank accounts. They hadn't accessed those. Thank God for two-factor authentication. But I checked the utility bills. The electric bill for the last month was $400. The water bill was triple the normal amount. They were running everything full blast. I sat there, staring at the screen, and a cold calm settled over me. They wanted to play tenants? Fine. I would play landlord. But not the nice landlord I had been. I remembered something. The lease, the flimsy piece of paper Dave was so proud of, specified that I paid the utilities. It was in my name. I picked up my phone. I didn't call the police. I called the electric company. Hi, I said. This is Mark Reynolds. I'm the account holder for 124 Oak Street, Unit 402. I'd like to schedule a temporary disconnect for maintenance repairs. Certainly, sir. When? Today. Immediately. There is a severe wiring issue I need to address safely. Okay. We can cut power remotely in about an hour. Do it. Next, the water company. I have a burst pipe situation. I need the water shut off at the main valve for the unit. We can send a tech out. No need, I have access to the basement shutoff. I just want to note on the account that it is being shut off for emergency repairs, so no one tries to turn it back on without my authorization. Understood. I wasn't done. I logged into my ISP account. I changed the Wi-Fi password to Pay Your Rent Dave. Then I throttled the speed down to dial-up levels, just enough so devices would connect but nothing would load. Then, I went to the hardware store. I bought a heavy-duty locking mechanism for the main breaker box in the basement, the one that controlled the specific units. As the owner, I had the keys to the basement. Dave did not. I drove back to the building. I waited until I saw Brenda leave with the kids, probably to take them to school. Dave would be alone. Or maybe asleep. I went to the basement. I found the breaker for Unit 402. I pulled the main switch. The satisfying clunk echoed in the concrete room. I installed the lock on the panel box. Then I went to the main water valve for my line and shut it tight. I removed the handle of the valve and put it in my pocket. I walked out to my car and waited. It took 20 minutes. My phone rang. It was Brenda. Mark. The power went out. Oh. I said, feigning surprise. That's strange. The other units have power. The fridge is off. All our food is going to spoil. And the Wi-Fi is down. The kids can't do their homework. I thought the kids were at school, Brenda. They stayed home sick today. Mark, fix it. You're the landlord. I can't, I said. I'm not there. Remember? You kicked me out. I'm at a motel. I can't check the breakers if I can't get into the building. Well, come over and fix it. I can't come over without an appointment, I said, throwing Dave's words back at her. I'll have to schedule a contractor. Might take a few days. They're very busy. A few days. We can't live without electricity. That sounds difficult, I said. Maybe you should stay at a hotel. I hung up. The war had begun. For the next 3 days, I waged a campaign of inconvenience. I knew Dave. Dave was a creature of comfort. He liked his video games, his hot showers, and his microwave burritos. Without power, water, or internet, the apartment was just a dark, cold box. They tried to fight back. Dave texted me threats. "Dave, this is a legal constructive eviction. I've looked it up. You have to provide utilities." Me, I am happy to restore utilities. I just need access to the apartment to inspect the electrical fault that caused the outage. Since you changed the locks and won't give me a key, I cannot verify it is safe to turn the power back on. I'm legally liable if I turn it on and there's a fire. Give me a key, and I'll come fix it. He didn't reply. He knew that if he opened the door, I was coming in, and I wasn't leaving. On day 4, the flying monkeys arrived. My Aunt Linda called. "Mark, how can you be so cruel? Ben has a cold. They are freezing in there." "They have a van," I said. "They can leave. They are choosing to stay in a dark apartment. They stole my home, Linda. Are you offering them your spare room?" "Well, no, I don't have the space." "Then don't tell me what to do with my property." I was done being the nice guy. I was done being the doormat. On the 5th day, I escalated. I knew that Dave had been collecting rent from Mrs. Higgins. I drafted a formal letter and taped it to every tenant's door in the building. Notice to residents: payments made to Dave Miller are not authorized. Do not give him cash. He is not the manager. He is a squatter. Future rent must be paid directly to Mark Reynolds. I also called the local locksmith, a guy I'd used for 10 years, Big Tony. "Tony," I said, "I need a favor. I'm locked out of my own unit. Squatters changed the cylinder." "You got the deed?" Tony asked. "I got the deed, my ID, and a utility bill. I'll meet you there in an hour." I met Tony in the lobby. I had my documents ready. He looked at them, nodded, and pulled out his drill. We went up to 402. I knocked. "Dave. It's Mark. I'm coming in to fix the electrical issue." "Go away." Dave screamed from inside. "I have a gun." My heart stopped. A gun? Dave didn't own a gun. He was terrified of guns. But even the threat changed things. Tony stopped. "Mark, if he says he has a gun, we gotta call the cops. I ain't drilling into a shootout." I looked at the door. If I called the cops, this would turn into a police report, a standoff, maybe a news story. And Brenda would spin it that I sent a SWAT team on her children. "He's lying," I said. "He doesn't have a gun." "I can't take that chance, boss," Tony said. He packed up his drill. "Call me when the place is empty." He left. I stood in the hallway, defeated. Dave had won this round. He knew the magic words to make people back off. I went back to the motel, furious. I needed a new strategy. I couldn't force them out physically. I couldn't starve them out fast enough. I needed leverage. I thought about Dave's weak points. His pride. His reputation. His impending settlement. Wait. The settlement. Mom had said the settlement check was practically in the mail. If Dave was expecting a payout, he would be terrified of losing it. I did some digging. I knew the name of the lawyer Dave was using because he had bragged about it months ago. Shark of the City, he'd called him. A guy named Henderson. I couldn't call Henderson and ask about Dave's case, attorney-client privilege. But I could send information. I wrote a letter to Henderson's office. To the law office of James Henderson, character reference for David Miller. Please be advised that your client, David Miller, is currently engaged in the illegal occupation of a property at 124 Oak Street. He is committing fraud by impersonating a landlord and collecting rents. Enclosed are affidavits from tenants he has defrauded. This behavior speaks to his credibility and character. I assumed this information would be relevant if his injury case goes to trial and his character is cross-examined. I didn't know if it would legally work, but I knew lawyers hated clients who committed crimes while a case was pending. It made them liabilities. I faxed it. 2 days passed. The standoff continued. I was bleeding money on the motel. Then, on a Tuesday morning, I got a text from Brenda. "Brenda, we need to talk." Me, the lobby. 1 hour. I sat in the lobby of my building. Brenda came down alone. She looked tired. Her hair was greasy, probably from the lack of hot water. She looked thinner. "This has to stop, Mark," she said, sitting opposite me. She didn't look sorry, she looked angry. "You're ruining our lives." "You changed the locks," I said. "You stole my home. You stole my tenants' money. We borrowed it to buy groceries because you wouldn't feed us. You are 45 years old, Brenda. Feed yourself." I slammed my hand on the table, startling her. "I am done. I want you out. Today." "We can't leave," she whispered. Henderson dropped Dave. I kept my face neutral, but inside I was cheering. "Why?" "He said Dave is a high-risk client now. He said he doesn't want to be associated with a fraud investigation. He dropped the case. There is no settlement coming." She started to cry. "We have nothing, Mark. If you kick us out, we are literally on the street. Please. Just give us a month. We'll pay rent. I'll get a job at the diner. Dave will do maintenance." I looked at my sister. I saw the manipulation, the years of excuses, the refusal to take responsibility. If I let them stay, they would never leave. They would drain me dry until I was the one on the street. "No," I said. Her face hardened. "You're a monster." "I'm a man who wants his house back. Here is the deal. You pack your things. You leave the keys on the counter. You walk out the front door by 5 p.m. today. If you do that, I won't sue you for the back rent, the stolen tenant money, or the damages. I will wipe the slate clean. You go your way, I go mine." "And if we don't?" "Then I go to the police," I lied. "I report the fraud. Dave goes to jail for theft. You lose the kids to Child Protective Services because you're living in a squalid apartment with no water or power. Is that what you want?" She stared at me. She knew I was bluffing about the jail time, but the CPS threat terrified her. She knew the apartment was filthy. She knew they were failing as parents. 5 p.m., she hissed. "I hope you rot in there." She got up and stormed to the elevator. I waited. I sat in my car across the street, watching the entrance. At 3 p.m., I saw Dave come out carrying a box. He threw it into the back of the van. Then another. Then Brenda came out with suitcases. They moved slowly, lethargically. It took them 2 hours. At 4:55 p.m., the van was loaded. The suspension was sagging. The kids climbed into the back seat. They looked miserable. I felt a pang of guilt, sharp and deep, but I pushed it down. I couldn't save people who were drowning me. Dave walked back to the front door one last time. He didn't leave the keys on the counter. He threw them into the bushes next to the entrance. Then he got in the van, and they drove away. I waited until they turned the corner. Then I ran across the street. I dug through the bushes, scratching my hands, until I found the keyring. I ran upstairs. I unlocked the door. The smell hit me first. It was a wall of rot. I walked in. My pristine apartment was a disaster zone. There was trash everywhere. Fast food wrappers, dirty diapers. Ben was 8. Why were there diapers? I realized they were using them as towels, empty bottles. The walls were scuffed. My beige carpet was stained with something dark and sticky. Soda? Wine? I walked to my office. The door was still locked. Thank God. I opened it. It was untouched. The one sanctuary. I went to the kitchen. The sink was piled high with dishes that had been sitting there for weeks. Mold was growing on the plates. The refrigerator, warm because of the power outage, smelled like death. I opened it and immediately retched. Meat had rotted. Milk had curdled and exploded. I walked into the living room. My leather sofa had a cigarette burn on the armrest. Rule number 1, no smoking. I sank down onto the floor, amidst the debris of my family's betrayal. I was exhausted. I was furious. I was alone. But I was home. The cleanup took 2 weeks. I had to hire professional cleaners for the carpet. I had to repaint the living room. I had to buy a new refrigerator because the smell simply wouldn't come out of the old one. The total cost of the damages, plus the hotel stay, plus the stolen rent money, came to about $5,000. I never heard from Dave again. I heard from Mom, though. She called me a week later. "They're staying at a campground," she said, her voice icy. "In a tent. Are you happy?" "I'm not happy, Mom," I said. "I'm safe." "There's a difference. You chose money over family." "No," I said. "I chose self-respect over abuse. Dave chose to change the locks. Dave chose to steal. Brenda chose to let him. They made their bed." She hung up on me. We haven't spoken since. It's been 3 months now. The apartment is clean again. The smell is gone. I have new tenants in the other units. I fired Dave from his imaginary management position, obviously, and Mrs. Higgins apologized for giving him the cash. I installed a new security system. Cameras in the hall. Smart locks that I can control from my phone. Sometimes, late at night, I sit in my recliner, the new one, and look at the door. I think about my niece and nephew. I worry about them. I wonder if I should have just let them stay, let them bleed me dry, just to keep a roof over those kids' heads. But then I remember the look on Dave's face when he told me to call before coming to my own home. I remember the entitlement. I remember the locks. I learned a hard lesson that month. Generosity without boundaries is just self-destruction. You can give someone the shirt off your back, but if they ask for your skin, you have to say no. I changed the locks again yesterday. Just to be sure. Update, 2 years later. I didn't think I'd ever write about this again, but people on the forum kept asking for an update. Life is quiet. Peaceful. I renovated the apartment. It looks completely different now, new floors, new paint. I needed to erase the ghost of what happened. I am still no contact with my parents. They chose their side. They send me Christmas cards with guilt-tripping messages written in shaky cursive, "Jesus forgives, why can't you?" But I throw them in the trash. I did hear about Brenda and Dave through a mutual cousin. They didn't stay in the tent long. They moved to a different state, bounced between motels, and eventually, the inevitable happened. Dave got arrested. Not for squatting, but for trying to pull an insurance scam at a Walmart. He's currently serving 2 years. With Dave gone, Brenda actually improved. She moved into a shelter program for women. She got a job. A real job, working reception at a dental office. She's been there a year. My cousin tells me that Brenda left Dave. She filed for divorce while he was in jail. Last week, I received a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a check for $50. And a note. "Mark, it's not much. I know I owe you thousands. I'm going to pay it back. $50 a month. It will take me the rest of my life, probably. I'm sorry. I was weak, and I let him steer the ship, but I was the one who let him on board. I hope you can one day stand to look at me again. Tell Mom I'm sorry too. Brenda." I stared at that check for a long time. $50. It was a drop in the bucket. It didn't fix the sofa. It didn't fix the relationship. But it was responsibility. It was the first time in her life Brenda had taken responsibility. I didn't cash the check. I framed it. I put it in my office, on the wall. A reminder that people can change, but usually only after they hit the rock bottom you stopped protecting them from. I haven't called her yet. I'm not ready. Maybe in another year. Maybe never. But tonight, I'm going to order a pizza. I'm going to sit in my clean, quiet living room. I'm going to watch a movie without anyone talking over it. And I'm going to lock my door, knowing that I am the only one who has the key. And that is enough. The sound of a zipper closing shouldn't sound like a gavel hitting a judge's bench, but in our master bedroom on a Tuesday evening, that's exactly what it sounded like. Finality. Linda didn't look at me. She was focused on folding a silk scarf, one I'd bought her for our 25th anniversary, and placing it gently into her leather weekender bag. That bag cost more than my first truck. She smoothed the fabric, clicked the lock, and finally turned to face me. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, still in my work boots, drywall dust on the laces, hands clasped between my knees. I asked her why. It was the only word I could manage. I asked her what I had done wrong, or what I hadn't done enough of. We had just paid off the mortgage on the suburban colonial she wanted. The kids were grown and out of the house. We were supposed to be entering the easy years. She sighed, The kind of sigh you give a slow child who just doesn't understand the math problem, and drop the sentence that has been ringing in my ears for the last 3 days. You're a good man, Mark. You really are. You're safe. But that's all you are. You're just a provider. You're a paycheck. You're the pavement under my feet, and I want to fly. She walked to the vanity mirror and applied a fresh coat of lipstick. Gary understands the finer things. He lives out loud. You just work. You come home, you eat, you fix things, you sleep. I'm dying of boredom, Mark. I need a partner who is my equal, not just my contractor. Gary. I knew Gary. He was the guy she met at the club mixer I didn't want to join but paid the dues for anyway because it made her happy. Gary drives a leased Porsche and talks loudly about market disruption and leveraging assets. He wears loafers with no socks. He's 55 trying to be 30. I've packed my essentials, she said, grabbing the handle of her bag. I'll send for the rest later. I'm staying at Gary's condo downtown. Don't make this hard, Mark. Just continue being you. You're good at surviving. I want to live. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I didn't throw things. I just watched her walk down the hallway. I heard the front door open, then close. I heard the engine of her Mercedes, paid for in full by me, start up and fade down the street. I sat there for an hour. She thinks I'm just a provider. She thinks I'm a simple man who fixes toilets and pays bills. She thinks my hands are rough because I'm too stupid to work with my head. She thinks the dirt under my fingernails is a sign of a lack of ambition. She has no idea what I've been doing for the last 15 years. See, Linda never asked about my hobby. She never asked where I went on those weekends she spent shopping with her girlfriends. She never asked why I drove a 10-year-old truck when I could afford a new one. She assumed I was just fishing or helping buddies fix their decks. She saw me as a wallet that occasionally needed maintenance. She doesn't know about the land. She doesn't know about the contracts. She doesn't know that while she was chasing status, I was building an empire of dirt and oak. Tomorrow, I have a meeting with my lawyer. Linda is going to want half. She's going to want alimony. She's going to expect me to fight for this house, this sterile box in the suburbs filled with her beige furniture. She can have the house. She can have the Mercedes. She can have the cash in the joint account. Because she doesn't know that the worthless inheritance I got from my uncle, those 80 acres of rocky, overgrown hillside 2 hours north, isn't worthless anymore. She signed a quitclaim deed on it a decade ago because she didn't want her name attached to a liability that incurs property tax. She doesn't know that I've spent every spare hour for a decade terracing that land. She doesn't know I replanted the walnut grove. She doesn't know that the old shed is now a fully operational, high-capacity sawmill and custom joinery workshop that just secured an exclusive contract with a national luxury hotel chain. She left a provider. She's about to find out she walked away from a builder. Update 1. The separation agreement. It has been 3 weeks since Linda walked out. The silence in the house is heavy, but honestly, it's peaceful. No more walking on eggshells. No more judgmental glances at my work clothes. I met with my lawyer, Saul. Saul is a bulldog of a man who has known me since high school. When I told him what Linda said, the just a provider comment, he didn't laugh. He just clicked his pen and opened a fresh legal pad. She's going to come for blood, Mark, Saul said. Gary is a flash in the pan. I know his type. He's leveraged to the hilt. He's going to encourage her to bleed you dry so he can maintain his lifestyle. We need to be strategic. I don't want a war, I told him. I just want a clean break. You want to keep the North property, Saul said, looking over my financials. That's the only thing I care about. Linda served me papers 4 days later. She wants the house, valued at $850,000, the car, half of my 401k, and significant alimony. She listed my income based on my day job as a general contractor. She thinks that's all there is. Here is where it gets interesting. 15 years ago, when I inherited the 80 acres from Uncle Bert, it was a mess. A literal dump site for local trash, overgrown with kudzu, with a falling-down barn. Linda took one look at it, scrunched up her nose, and said, "Get rid of it. I don't want to pay taxes on dirt." I couldn't sell it. It had been in the family for 3 generations. So, I asked her to sign a post-nuptial agreement regarding that specific asset. I told her I would take full financial responsibility for it, taxes, liability, upkeep, and she would have no claim to it or its debts. She signed it so fast the ink nearly smoked. She wanted zero risk. She thought she was being smart. Saul pulled that document out of the safe. "This is your shield, Mark. It's ironclad. She waived all interest in the Bertram estate and any improvements thereon in exchange for you assuming sole liability. I signed the separation agreement yesterday. I gave her the suburban house. I gave her the furniture. I gave her the Mercedes. I agreed to a lump sum payout from our savings that hurt a little, but leaves me debt-free. I kept my truck. I kept my tools. And I kept the North property." When we met to sign the papers, Gary was with her. He was wearing a suit that was too tight and a watch that was too big. He smirked at me across the conference table. Linda looked different. She looked like she was trying too hard. Her hair was lighter, her dress was shorter. She looked at me with pity. "I hope you'll be okay, Mark," she said, sliding the papers across the table. "I know the house was big for you. Maybe you can find a nice apartment near your work." "I'll be fine, Linda," I said. I signed my name. "I'm moving up north." She laughed. A short, sharp sound. "To the dump? Mark, be serious. Where are you going to live?" "In the barn." Gary chimed in. "Let the man live like a pioneer, babe. Some guys just like the dirt." I didn't say a word. I didn't tell them that the barn has radiant floor heating now. I didn't tell them that the dump is currently curing 20,000 board feet of black walnut worth more than Gary's Porsche. I just took my copy of the papers, stood up, and shook Saul's hand. "Good luck, Linda," I said. "I mean that." I walked out. I drove to the house, her house now, and packed the last of my things. My clothes, my grandfather's hand planes, my books. I left the keys on the counter. As I drove north, the city fell away. The subdivisions gave way to fields, and the fields gave way to forests. I felt a weight lift off my chest that I didn't know I was carrying. I arrived at the North property just as the sun was setting. I opened the heavy steel gate, the one I welded myself 3 years ago. I drove up the gravel lane, past the rows of saplings I planted, past the drying sheds. I pulled up to the barn. It doesn't look like a barn anymore. It looks like a fortress of timber and stone. I unlocked the front door and walked into the great room. The smell of cedar and tung oil welcomed me home. I poured myself a drink, walked out onto the deck overlooking the valley, and sat down. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Linda. "The water heater is making a noise. Who do I call?" I looked at the text. I looked at the valley. I blocked her number. Update 2, the grind and the silence. It has been 6 months since the divorce was finalized. I haven't heard a single word from Linda, mostly because I changed my number, but also because she's likely too busy living her high life. My life, however, has been a masterclass in focused aggression. The business, I call it iron and oak joinery, is exploding. I spent 10 years building this in the dark. I spent weekends milling lumber, drying it, and learning the art of Japanese joinery. I didn't just want to be a carpenter, I wanted to be an artisan. The contract with the hotel chain was the tipping point. They wanted authentic rustic luxury furniture for a new line of boutique lodges. They wanted tables made from single slabs of reclaimed wood. They wanted headboards with history. Because I own the land, the trees, the mill, and the workshop, my overhead is non-existent compared to the competition. I control the entire supply chain. I am the provider, the manufacturer, and the distributor. I hired 3 guys. Old school guys. 2 are retired union carpenters who were bored to death, and 1 is a young veteran named Davis who wanted to learn a trade and keep his head down. We work 6 days a week, 10 hours a day. The shop is a symphony of productivity. No music, just the whine of the bandsaw, the rhythmic thump of the planer, and the smell of sawdust. It's heaven. But it's not just the wood. It's the land. I've been working with a local architect on Phase 2. This was the part of the plan I never even whispered to Linda because she would have called it insane. I'm not just building furniture. I'm building a legacy. I'm developing the south ridge of the property, the part with the view of the lake, into 5 ultra-high-end eco-cabins. Not rentals. I'm selling them. The Ridge at Iron Oak. I put the first plot on the market last month, just to test the waters. I listed it as pre-construction, custom timber frame estate. It sold in 4 days. Cash. To a surgeon from the city who wanted a quiet place to retire. The profit from that one sale wiped out the remaining debt on my machinery and put a healthy 6 figures in the bank. I went into town yesterday to buy supplies. I stopped at the diner for a coffee. Small towns talk, and I generally keep to myself, but the waitress, Sarah, knows me. She poured my coffee and leaned in. "Saw your ex-wife in here last week," she said quietly. My stomach tightened. "Oh. Yeah. She was with that guy. The loud one." Sarah grimaced. "They were arguing. He's not pleasant, Mark. He was complaining about the prices. In a diner. Who complains about the price of eggs in a roadside diner?" "Not my problem, Sarah," I said, taking a sip. "She looked tired, Mark. She asked about you." "What did you tell her?" "Told her I haven't seen you. Said you disappeared into the woods like a hermit." I smiled. "Good girl. Keep it that way." I left a $20 tip for a $3 coffee and walked out. It's strange. I don't miss her. I miss the idea of having someone to share things with, but I don't miss her. I don't miss the pressure to be something I'm not. I don't miss being called just a provider. But the universe has a funny way of balancing the scales. My son David came up to visit this weekend. David is 26, works in IT, lives 3 hours away. He took the divorce hard, mostly because he saw how broken I was at the beginning. He pulled his car up to the shop and just stared. He hadn't been up here in 5 years. Back then, it was mud and weeds. Now it's manicured gravel, stone walls, and the massive timber frame workshop. He walked inside, saw the crew working, saw the massive slabs of walnut on the workbenches, saw the schematics for the cabins on the wall. "Dad," he said, his voice quiet. "What is this?" "This is what I was doing while your mother was watching reality TV," I said. He walked over to a finished dining table, a 10-foot masterpiece destined for a lodge in Aspen. He ran his hand over the grain. "Mom thinks you're living in a shack," David said. "She told me she feels guilty. She thinks you're destitute. Let her think that. She's struggling, Dad. Gary isn't who he said he was. His condo is a rental. His car is a lease. He owes money all over town. Mom put the house up as collateral for one of his investments." I stopped sanding. I looked at my son. "She put the house, the paid-off house I gave her, up as collateral?" David nodded. "She signed a HELOC. Gary said he could double the money in 3 months. That was 4 months ago. The bank is calling." I felt a flash of anger. Not for her, but for the house. That house represented 30 years of my sweat. I paid for every brick, every shingle. And she leveraged it for a con man within 6 months. That's her choice, David. She wanted to fly. "I know," David said. "I just thought you should know. She might come looking for you." "She can look," I said, turning back to the wood. "But she won't find the man she left." Update 3, the crash. It didn't take long. 2 months after David's visit, the inevitable happened. I was in the middle of a meeting with the architect and the surgeon who bought the first lot. We were standing on the ridge, looking over the lake, discussing the placement of the master suite. My phone rang. It was an unknown number. Usually, I ignore them, but I was expecting a call from a lumber supplier in Canada. "This is Mark," I answered. "Mark." The voice was thin, shaky. It was Linda. "Hello, Linda. I couldn't find your number. David wouldn't give it to me. I had to look through old phone records." "What do you want, Linda?" "I'm working." "Working? You mean, are you on a job site?" "Yes." "Mark, I'm in trouble." She started to cry. It wasn't the soft, manipulative crying she used to do to get out of parking tickets. This was real fear. "They're taking the house." I signaled to the architect to give me a minute and walked away toward the tree line. "Who is taking the house?" "The bank." "Gary, the deal didn't work out." The market crashed. I don't understand it. He said it was a sure thing. Now the bank says I owe them $200,000 or they foreclose. Gary left, Mark. He just packed his bag and left. He stole my jewelry. I'm sorry to hear that, Linda. That sounds terrible. I have nowhere to go, she sobbed. I have no money. The joint account is gone. I spent it on living. I need help, Mark. I need you to help me save the house. I can't do that. What do you mean you can't? You have money. You always have money tucked away. You're the provider. That's what you do. The entitlement in her voice. Even at rock bottom, she still saw me as a utility. A safety net. I'm not your provider anymore, Linda. You fired me. Remember? You wanted to fly. You didn't want the pavement. Don't be cruel. We were married for 25 years. And you ended it in 25 minutes because you were bored. You signed the papers. You took the house. You took the cash. You took the risk. I have my own expenses now. What expenses? You're living in a shack in the woods. I looked back at the construction site. I looked at the $3 million view. I looked at my crew, my guys, who rely on me for their livelihoods. I have to go, Linda. Do not call me again. I hung up. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline. I felt like I had just dodged a bullet I had been standing in front of for decades. I walked back to the architect and the surgeon. Everything okay? The surgeon asked. Yeah, I said, putting the phone in my pocket. Just an old debt finally cleared. The next week was a blur of activity. We broke ground on the second cabin. The hotel chain doubled their order. I had to hire 2 more guys. I promoted Davis to foreman. I decided to legally incorporate the business structure to further insulate the assets. Iron Oak Holdings. I was building a firewall around my life. Then, she showed up. It was a Tuesday, almost a year to the day she left me. I was in the shop, running a slab of maple through the planer. The noise was deafening. I didn't hear the car drive up. I saw Davis stop working and look toward the large bay doors. I turned around. Linda was standing there. She looked diminished. She was wearing jeans and a sweater that had seen better days. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. The Mercedes was gone. She had arrived in a rusted Honda Civic. She was staring at the workshop. She was staring at the massive timber trusses, the stacks of premium lumber, the bustling activity of 5 men working on high-end pieces. I turned off the planer. The silence rushed back into the room. Mark, she whispered. I wiped my hands on a rag and walked over to her, stopping 10 feet away. You're trespassing, Linda. She spun around, looking at the property. She looked up the hill and saw the skeleton of the first luxury cabin rising against the sky. She saw the new truck parked outside with the Iron and Oak logo on the door. What is all this? Her voice trembled. This is my hobby, I said flatly. This is the dirt you didn't want to pay taxes on. You own this? All of this? I do. But, you were just a contractor. You fixed bathrooms. I did whatever I had to do to pay for your lifestyle, Linda. But this is what I was building while you were sleeping. She looked at me, and I saw the gears turning. I saw the calculation. She saw the money. She saw the stability. She saw the safety she had thrown away. Mark, she took a step forward, putting on a brave, trembling smile. I made a mistake. A horrible mistake. I was lost. Gary, he brainwashed me. I see that now. I see what a strong, capable man you are. I see what you've built. We can share this. I can help you. I can run the office. We can be partners. I laughed. It was a dry, rasping sound. Partners? Linda, you explicitly signed away your right to be my partner on this property. You thought it was a burden. You didn't want the risk. You don't get to come back for the harvest when you refuse to plant the seeds. But I'm your wife. You're my ex-wife. And you're a stranger. You called me just a provider. Well, I'm providing for myself now. I'm providing for my employees. I have nothing left for you. I'm going to lose the house, Mark. I'll be homeless. David told me you have a sister in Ohio. I suggest you drive there while that Honda still runs. She stared at me with pure hatred then. The mask slipped. You bastard. You hid this from me. You defrauded me. I hid nothing. It was all here. You just never looked. You never drove up here. You never asked. You just assumed I was nothing. I turned to Davis. Escort her off the property. If she comes back, call the sheriff. Mark. You can't do this, she screamed as Davis gently but firmly stepped between us. It's already done, I said. I put my hearing protection back on. I turned the planer back on. The roar of the machine drowned out her screaming. I didn't watch her leave. I had work to do. Update 4, the aftermath and new foundations. It has been 2 years since that day in the workshop. Things move slower in the country, but business moves fast. The ridge at Iron Oak is complete. 5 homes, all sold. I kept one of the plots for myself, but not a big house. I built a small, perfect timber frame cabin right on the water. It's enough for me. Linda lost the suburban house. It was foreclosed on. I heard through David that she moved to Ohio to live with her sister for a while, then got a job as a receptionist at a car dealership. It's honest work. I hope she finds peace in it. David comes up often. He's actually talking about quitting his IT job and coming to work for me. He wants to learn the business. I told him he has to start at the bottom, sweeping sawdust and stacking lumber. He smiled and said, I'm ready. I've started seeing someone. Her name is Eleanor. She's a local landscape architect who I hired to design the gardens for the cabins. She's my age. She has rough hands and laugh lines around her eyes. She drives a truck. On our 3rd date, I took her to the workshop. I was nervous. I showed her the operation. She ran her hand over a rough-sawn oak beam. She didn't ask how much it was worth. She didn't ask what I could buy her. She looked at me and said, the patience this must have taken. You have a beautiful mind, Mark. I almost cried. We sat on the deck of my cabin last night, watching the sun go down over the lake. The business is running itself now. I have a general manager. I can actually breathe. I thought about Linda's words. You're just a provider. She was wrong. I was never just a provider. I was a cultivator. I was waiting for the right soil. And the tragedy of her life isn't that she left me. The tragedy is that she spent 25 years sleeping next to a man she never bothered to meet. I'm writing this because I know there are a lot of guys out there like me. Guys who quietly do the work. Guys who are called boring because they are responsible. Guys who are seen as utilities rather than human beings. Don't let them break you. Don't let them convince you that your stability is a weakness. Build your castle in silence. If they want to leave, let them. Open the door for them. Because once the deadweight is gone, you'll be amazed at how high you can fly. As for me, I have a meeting tomorrow morning about a new plot of land, 200 acres of hardwood forest in the next county. I think I'm going to build something bigger. Final update, 3 years later, the legacy. I didn't intend to update this again, but the messages I still get asking what happened deserve an answer. Life is quiet. The good kind of quiet. Iron and Oak has expanded. We are now the premier restoration and timber framing company in the tri-state area. David did quit his IT job. He's been with me for 3 years now. He's running the custom furniture division. He's good at it, better than I ever was. He has an eye for design that I lack. Seeing my son find his purpose in the sawdust has been the greatest paycheck of my life. Eleanor and I got married last spring. It wasn't a big production. We did it right here on the property, in the grove of walnuts I planted 15 years ago. She didn't want a diamond, she wanted a new greenhouse. I built it for her with my own hands. We treat each other as equals. There is no provider and dependent. We are a team. When I have a bad month, she picks up the slack. When she's overwhelmed, I step in. That's what a partnership is. And Linda? I saw her one last time, about 6 months ago. I was in the city meeting with a client at a coffee shop downtown. I was walking back to my truck when I saw her. She was waiting at a bus stop. She looked older. Not in a bad way, But the artificial youth she chased with Gary was gone. She was wearing a uniform, a beige vest with a retail logo on it. She looked tired. She saw me. I paused. I wasn't angry anymore. The anger burned out a long time ago, fueling the furnaces that built my new life. Now, there was just a dull ache for the wasted time. She looked at my truck, a new one this time. She looked at my clothes, clean, high quality, but still practical. She didn't come over. She didn't wave. She just nodded. A small, almost imperceptible nod. It was an acknowledgement. A surrender. I nodded back. I got in my truck and drove home. I realized something on that drive. Linda gave me a gift. By discarding me, she forced me to stop compromising. She forced me to bet on myself. If she had stayed, I would still be fixing toilets in the suburbs, hiding my dreams in a shed, terrified of upsetting the balance. Her departure was the demolition required for the renovation. To the young men reading this, do not marry a woman who loves your lifestyle more than she loves you. Do not marry someone who sees your labor as their entitlement. And to the older men who feel like they are just walking wallets, check your pockets. You might have the keys to a kingdom you forgot you were building. The sun is coming up over the ridge. I have to go. The sap is rising, and there is wood to be cut. Signed, Mark. The Builder.